So if you're thinking about buying a live streaming camera, what are your options? There's a few things that you want to keep your mind on. Firstly, does it have a clean HDMI feed? Does it have autofocus in live view? Will it overheat after half an hour of use? All these things are essential, but don't worry, in today's video I'm going to be explaining to you the cameras that are good, the cameras that are not excellent, and the ones to avoid if you're thinking about live streaming. I'm going to focus on Canon today. You know, I shoot Canon most of the time, so that's my main preference. I have upgraded from older cameras to newer cameras to this current camera now, which actually works very well for my needs for live streaming. I've live streamed for up to 3 hours continuously and not had problems with these cameras. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first option. So the first two cameras I'm going to talk about are going to be at the bottom of the pile. Possible, but difficult. So the 80D, Canon EOS 80D one, and the EOS 200D, also known as the SL2 camera, they can offer you options for live streaming because they have a HDMI outfeed. However, they're not totally clean. You get a little box on there, you know, the autofocus box, the white box. So that is quite annoying having that there. You can get rid of it by selecting manual focus on the lens and that box will go away. However, it's not going to have autofocus. How can you get around that? Well, if you're quite clever, you can get a lens which is going to allow you to have a wider aperture. So for example, if I was live streaming, instead of streaming at really low 1.42 aperture, I could go up to f4. And then because there's enough depth there, it look like I'm in focus. But if you're doing sit down shoots, that should be perfectly fine. If not, and you want something that does track your face, stay around. I've got a few more options to you I'm going to show you. So let's have a look at the next few options. Okay, so the next one we're looking at is the 7D. So the EOS 7D Mark II is a good option. Not bad. It's a decent camera. You can do a lot of things with it. But today we're focusing on live streaming. So in that example, it does have a clean HDMI setting. And in the clean HDMI output, you can have it live streaming. However, there is a slight problem. If you use the camera regularly, you'll notice after about half an hour, the camera will get hot and it turns off. So you have to physically go to the camera and return it back on again. So I think the 7D Mark II is not going to be a good one for us to be using. You can get clean HDMI, but with limitations. So that's something to really think about there. Do you want a camera that you can just set and forget? We've covered 3 so far. Let's look at some other options and see what those offer you and see if those will be a better option. So yeah, as we're saying, we're going to look at a few more options here. I've bundled a few cameras into this option and they're ones that will be okay. So for example, I'm showing you a EOS 5D Mark IV. I would also put the EOS R in this category, as well as the EOS 1DX Mark III. So they're cameras that allow you to get live streaming, but there's a few limitations in terms of the menus. But if you select the menu in the camera, there'll be a HDMI display option. You've got a few different settings you can select. So if you pick the right setting, those cameras will be fine. So just to recap, that's a few cameras there. The EOS R, EOS 5D Mark IV, as well as the EOS 1DX Mark III. So they're decent options for you. But what else have we got on this part? What else would I consider using? Let's have a look at a few more. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to break this out for cameras that are optimum for live streaming. Right now I'm showing you a camera that I actually upgraded to. So you'll remember I used to use a camera that was in those lower categories that I just covered and said they weren't great. It's still doable, don't get me wrong. I've done a number of live streams with this camera, over 200 or 300 live streams, and this camera fell in the category that I said is not excellent, but it's still doable. So if you can work around it and you want to save a bit of money, it's not a bad idea. However, if you want the creme of the creme and you want to have a nice setup, with worry-free setup, the cameras I'm going to show you are EOS 250D, also known as SL3. That's the camera I brought and I use right now for live streaming because it's got a clean HDMI out, which you can see here. So there's no menus. It's autofocusing, so it actually focuses on my face if I move around. And also I've live streamed with the camera for up to 3 hours and I've not had any issues. This is going to be similar to where you're living and your humidity and your temperature and your location. I did do a full-on explanation of overheating your camera and why that overheats and things to think about, so keep that in mind. I'm in the UK, so in the UK we're lucky if we get a sunny day. Also in this part I'm going to put a few more cameras. The EOS 850D, also known as a T8i, EOS M200, EOS M50 Mark II. Great cameras for live streaming. Any one of those cameras you can set up, plug into your HDMI capture card, such as an Elgato, just like that, and you can live stream. There's a few more cameras which are slightly newer, so I will cover those as well and let you know the limitations of those. So next up, we can look at a bit more of a pro option. Not pro, a bit more pricey. So let's have a look at those ones next. Okay, so now we're looking at the more newer releases. So these are cameras that you'd expect to be perfectly fine. It's a little bit more money. They're mirrorless options from Canon. Things like the EOS RP, the EOS R5 and the R6. So they all have clean HDMI out. You can go into the menus and you can set them to clean HDMI out. Should have a nice clean HDMI. So that basically is a camera look there. That's the R6 there. So they all offer clean HDMI out. So let me just recap for you and summarize to let you know what cameras we talked about today. So if you're looking for a live streaming camera, the main things you want to focus on: clean HDMI out, autofocusing, and it not overheating. So the suggestions: the Canon EOS RP, R5 and R6, good options. Also the 90D or the Mark 6, the M6 Mark II, on 2 cameras or more. In the mid-range, you've got the Canon 250D, also known as the SL3, the 850D, also known as a T8i, the M200 and the M50 Mark II. If you want to play about with options, you've got the EOS R, EOS 5D Mark IV, and EOS 1D X Mark III. Cameras you can try, but I wouldn't recommend: EOS 7D Mark III, Mark II even. So the Mark II, you can live stream for up to about 30 minutes. So if you've got fairly short live streams, then you're okay with it. But if it's any longer than that, the camera will turn off and you have to turn it on again, which is not ideal. Other than that, things with manual focus are things like the EOS 80D, the EOS 200D. You can even put other cameras in that, such as the T2i, the lower spec cameras. So that gives you an idea of the cameras. I did do a full-on explanation of different camera comparisons if you're not using it for live streaming, and also about HDMI capture cards. So have a look at this playlist next and you'll see all of that, and it will help you through your journey for finding the perfect camera. I'll see you on that video.